Ford has won a lawsuit that was going to cost them potentially $1.2 billion related to claims on fuel efficiency numbers. So this may sound vaguely familiar. Volkswagen, of course, somewhat famously got into a lot of trouble a couple years ago on fuel efficiency claims. And maybe other places or other companies are also playing fast and loose with their fuel efficiency numbers. But Ford has won its appeal, so it doesn't have to pay this money. Ford was accused of deceiving the EPA and inflating their MPG ratings by as much as 15%, which that sounds concerning. All right, so let's learn a little bit more. Ford has defeated an appeal. Ford has defeated an appeal in a case that accused it of deceiving the EPA of inflating MPG numbers of pickup trucks. The court ruled that agency authority is greater than individual state authority in determining fuel economy. So the underlying legal issue here is preemption. Preemption. The federal government has regulations when it comes to cars, including fuel efficiency. States have regulations on cars, including, apparently, fuel efficiency. So, what happens when you have a potential conflict between these two things? And one of the ways that you resolve that legally is through the idea of preemption. If the federal government speaks sufficiently clearly, then the federal government's regulations will govern because it's interstate commerce. And we all know how that works. The federal government regulating interstate commerce. So it has to do so clearly. It has to do so directly. But if it does so, then it can overtake state level authority on these issues. So in trying to determine what the right MPG numbers are, or how to calculate the MPG numbers, the correct methodology is the one set out by the federal government, right? There could be other methods of calculating MPG. How do you go about calculating it? And so you, depending on how you calculate it, you might come up with different numbers. But the correct way to do it is the federal system. That's what this lawsuit is about. Whose procedure governs? And in this situation, the federal government's does. So the state one can take a back seat. The Sixth Circuit ruled against a class action plaintiffs who claimed that the automaker had misled the Environmental Protection Agency by intentionally miscalculating factors used to certify the numbers. The plaintiffs had claimed that this led to the EPA overestimating fuel economy by as much as 15%, which of course would potentially induce them to pay more for the truck, and of course would definitely induce them to pay more for fuel. So you can't mislead the consumer. You have to have honesty in your trade. So the number has to be accurate. But accurate based on what? Based on the way the federal government wants you to calculate it. The court found that federal law gives EPA authority to estimate the economy, which preempts the field. That's the relevant issue. Preempt is the magic word in this paragraph. That is your legal doctrine. The circuit judge added that the estimates do not need to be strictly accurate because, of course, they're estimates, and the agency has significant authority to investigate and combat fraud. So, are the numbers perfect? I don't know. Are the numbers calculated the way the EPA wants you to calculate them? If so, then you've obeyed the law. So maybe the EPA should have a different method, or maybe they should require greater precision. I don't know. Talk to the EPA about it. But as far as Ford's concerned, apparently they did what the EPA wanted them to do. So, that's that. And the state over here is like, we want you to do it a different way. No, not so much. So state law tort claims like plaintiffs would skew this and permit jurors to take the EPA's place. So no, not so much with that. Ford said it was pleased with the results, which followed an investigation from the Justice Department into emissions and fuel certification. The probe closed in 2021 and no legal action. So either Ford was complying or it was not a big enough deal or whatever, but the Justice Department apparently looked into this issue. And as far as they're concerned, they're happy. So apparently Ford did what they were supposed to do as far as the federal government's concerned. And the states over here, like, hey, we want you to do it a different way. And the federal government's like, oh, nah. The plaintiffs are unhappy, say this is a horrible result for consumers, says it's dead against Supreme Court precedent that allows state to regulate deceptive conduct. Yes, states have authority to regulate deceptive conduct in generally. Honesty in trade. honesty in business, honesty in advertisement. Yes, states have broad authority to regulate advertisements, representations in trade. They sure do. In this particular context, however, in this particular context of the EPA thing, the EPA has preempted the field. So, yes, states have lots of general authority, just not here, because the federal government has preempted the field in order to have a nationwide standard. And the virtue of having a nationwide standard is that no state can come on top of it. So regulates trade in some other way, but not this. Thus, that brings us to the end of the case of the Ford F-150 and Ranger and fuel economy. Apparently, there was some concern that the EPA numbers might not be accurate when it comes to the miles per gallon. How many miles per gallon is this car getting? Not many, I'm sure. But whatever the number was, it was off. Or so said the people complaining. The federal government looked into it and like, yeah, we're good. And the states are over here like, we have authority to regulate honesty in trade. Yes, typically you do. But the issue is, how is that number accurate? What is the accuracy of the number? When they say MPG and they put it on the thing, how do we determine if it's accurate? The federal government says use this formula. So the number is accurate. It is accurate. There are other ways to potentially generate the number. You could potentially require a more precise number or a different, thresholds of tolerances or something. But the federal government's like, well, this is the accurate number. And so the states are over here like, it's inaccurate. No, it's not. So it's not dishonest. So you can't regulate it, state. And that, for the moment, brings us to the end of discussion of this case.